What's up guys, Crane here from LogicLounge.com. Today I wanted to show you guys how I edit photos in Adobe's Photoshop Lightroom. Lightroom is a great program for anybody who wants to edit photos, both on the amateur side and even the professional side as well. It's a great program that really allows you to edit photos to the best of your ability. It gives so many features, so many ways that you can take photos and manipulate them. It's fantastic. And today I wanted to show how I edit photos from a set that I did when I was down vacationing in Hawaii. I was on the great island of Maui, and I went up to the large mountain there called Haleakala, and I took pictures of the sunset, and I also stayed around for a couple hours afterwards and took some great astrophotography shots, which I will share with you guys here as I show you guys how I edit. So the first step that I do is I just import all the photos into my library. I just take them in and I dump them in. Now there's something like, I think, 400-ish photos that I had taken, and that was a lot of photos that I had took there, and it's just kind of just snapping away, taking multiple shots, seeing what worked, what didn't work, adjusting things, taking photos like that. And what I do from there is I just start going through them all, and I will rate them using the Lightroom's rating system with the 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 on your keyboard, and I just rate them how much I like them. If I think that they are going to be good for editing, I'll rate like a 3. So when I get into my develop tab, I will sort by 3-starred photos, and then I will be able to see which ones that I think are editable. So I took the 372 photos and got them right around to 23 photos, and I think even from here it'll be even less when I finally get done with everything. There's just a lot of photos, some duplicates in there if I don't know which one might be better for editing. So let's just dig right in here, and let's show you one day shot that I can edit and one night shot I can edit. So let's edit, I suppose, this shot. It's a nice shot, and I just wanted to grasp the elevation with just what is up there. And it was a great day because there were clouds. There were lots of clouds, so it was like you were floating up into the air. You couldn't see the ground at all, which was very nice. Obviously you could see, you know, up until a certain point, but you couldn't see the mainland. You could only see the peak of this mountain, which is really great, and gave you some surreal experiences when you were looking out here. I think I have another photo. See this really cloud layer, and if you were to look below those clouds, you would actually see the rest of the island, which isn't right there. So it looks kind of cool. So I usually just start playing around from here. If I think a black and white shot might work better, or a color shot, but I'm fairly certain a color shot is going to work better here. Now, from here, it's all about personal preference. I like a little bit more punchy colors. I like there to be some contrast. I know a lot of people like to mute out their colors a little bit, but I just start playing with the sliders. That's all I do, is I just play with the sliders a little bit, see what I think works. I have a large monitor. It runs at 2560 by 1600, so I'm actually able to see a lot of the finer details. Even zooming in, you can see this isn't probably, well, actually it is fairly sharp. It takes a second to load in the sharpness, so I tend to take zooming in and out as a good thing. You can see here we have all the wispy clouds, which looks kind of cool, and I might want to exaggerate that a little bit more as I get down. So I'll just start playing with features, vibrances. I really like vibrances when I get into clouds and when I get into very bright situations, as I can just punch up that brightness just a little bit more and make it a little bit more surreal and a little bit more kind of popping off the page, which I think is fantastic. Now there's advanced things here that you can do with the tone curves. I usually leave tone curves alone, as that's more of something that if you really wanted to get there and edit anything, you could, as well as I don't really mess with the hues or the colors that much. Only if I'm doing black and white will I do that, as I can get some of the colors to change how they are when they're black and white, and I really like that. Split toning is another thing that I don't usually do all that much. Now photos like these, I usually want to sharpen them up a little bit as well as noise reduce them, because I think I took this at a fairly high ISO, and so I just want to make sure that none of the granular stuff is in there, but I don't want to go up too high, because if you really bring up the noise reduction, you'll start to see that everything starts to get blurry. So you can look at the sign here, and hopefully this will come through in the video, but if I were to bring the noise reduction up very far, you can see it gets just slightly blurrier, and that's because it just tries to blur out all of the noise. So somewhere in the middle is somewhere where I like to put it. Lens correction is a big thing for me. I'm always about lens correction because the cameras have lenses on them and they don't take necessarily the most ideal photos. Sometimes they'll be bowed out a little bit, especially at the lower end of the spectrum. So I'll want to what I usually do is I just enable the profile correction and the chromatic aberrations, which I use pure Canon lenses, and Canon lenses and Adobe Lightroom has a whole profile for Canon lenses, so they know exactly how the photos should be, and they'll correct them that way. I don't affect my photos that much. You can add highlights and stuff like that. I just don't find it necessary. I mean, it might be cool, especially if I have like blurry edges down here. Like I think down here in the corner I have a little bit blurry edges. So what I could do is bring down the highlight priority just a little bit and kind of blacken out the edges, and that kind of brings back that blurriness from being too much. And that's fairly it. Now I would spend probably 20 minutes, and I probably will go back and spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes editing this photo to get it just exactly how I like it. But that's the general gist of things when I go to edit photos. And you can see I like it on a little bit more contrasty side. I like it a little bit more on the punchy of the colors, but that's just me, and that's what people like to do. And I really like Lightroom because I can step back through any of these. So I can see back from where we began to where we are now. You can see just how much of a change there is with what we've done, and we've just made this photo better, much better. So that's how I did that. Let's go on to a night photo, because I really like astrophotography. Astrophotography is like one of the best things for me that I really like. So let's see if I can find a photo that would be fairly easy to edit. How about this one? Okay, so it's about in the same place where I left off. When it became night outside, there were actually some tour groups that came up and had telescopes, and so they had come up to where I was taking my photos, and this lady just plopped down her telescope right there next to me while I was taking photos and started her little tour group. They were walking about and talking, and it's kind of cool. So she was showing everybody everything, and there were lights on the ground, these red lights, so people could know that they didn't trip over the telescope. So let's go back up here and start editing again. And I edit astrophotography a little bit differently than I would any other photo, because I really want to make the stars pop, and I want it to be a little bit on the blacker side because I really want the stars to come out. So once again, I will start editing the photos. I will probably turn down the exposure slightly. I do tend to overexpose my night shots because I really want to get as much information that I can out of them. One of the weirdest things about photography is that you can't really underexpose a photo more than you can overexpose a photo. So if you overexpose a photo, you get a lot of information. There's a point though that if you overexpose it too much, you lose information. So I tend to be on a little bit more overexposed side and then tone it back. And I can tend to get better photos out of that than some people who might say, well, I like over or underexposed photos because I can try to get the information out of them. And that's kind of true. I mean, you can do however you want. But that's how I tend to do it. And we can see here that I'm just kind of, like I said, I'm just playing around with everything. You know, what about a black and white photo, which I don't think works too well on very dark photos. You can't really get everything. Oh, there we go. So I tend to play the tone curve a little bit, and I make it a little bit more strong on the contrast side, and you can see it really just makes those stars pop out, which I really love to see. Lens corrections, once again, I usually pop in, and it usually brings everything out a little bit more. And from here as well, what I'll tend to do is I'll tend to just play and see what I can get out of the photo. See, if I were to, bring everything up, I can start to see more things, but you can just see how bad the photo looks. So I tend to just play around with the sliders. That's what I do. That's honestly the number one thing that I can tell somebody is to just play around with the sliders and to see what you like. So this is somewhat of how I like this photo. This is actually a situation where I would play with these hue sliders a little bit more, actually probably the saturation sliders, and I'd bring down the tone of the reds and probably try to punch out some of the red here, because this is very intense red right here. So I would try to punch this out a little bit more, tone that down, because it really takes the eye of the photo to the red, which is something that I don't want to do. So I would try to punch that out a little bit and to bring in more of your eyes to wander about the sky, as well as this light here on top of this pole. So that's how I edit day photos. That's how I edit night photos. I implore you guys to send off any photos that you guys may like to see. I will post these photos up fairly soon. I'm still actually in the process of editing them. And like I said, with the rating system, I know I kind of touched on that a little bit. When I'm done with the photo and I think it's great, I'll rate it a star 5. And rating it a star 5 means that I think it's ready for production, or when I say production, I mean it's ready to be published. I think that it's a final product and I like it. And that's how I tend to sort my photos, so that I can sort them. You can see, okay, I got one 5-star photo. It means I'm done with it, I'm done editing it, and I can send it off, and that's how I tend to use my Lightroom process. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. If you guys want more photo tutorials, let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, I will see you guys in our next video.